The Great Hall of Nexus Prime stretched like a cathedral of light and crystal. Ambassador Kim Dae-ho stood at the center of the circular chamber, his black diplomatic uniform stark against the rainbow colors that danced across the alien architecture. Above him, hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds watched from floating platforms that moved like slow dancers through the air. Kim Dae-ho had represented humanity for 15 years. He had signed trade agreements that brought prosperity to Earth. He had negotiated peace treaties that ended conflicts before they could begin. He had shaken hands, claws, tentacles, and energy fields with creatures that most humans had only seen in documentaries. Today, he felt like a stranger in a place he had once called a second home. The speaker at the podium was Valdorian, her crystalline body refracting light into beautiful patterns as she moved. Her voice came through the universal translator as cold and sharp as breaking glass. The Galactic Council has reached its decision regarding the human question, she announced. After careful consideration of recent events and extensive analysis of human behavioral patterns, we have concluded that humanity poses an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Kim Dae-ho felt his hands clench into fists. He forced them to relax. Diplomats did not show anger, even when the universe was falling apart around them. Captain Park So-jin watched the proceedings from her flagship, the Earth Shield, through a quantum communication link. Her ship hung in space near the outer edge of human territory, part of the defensive fleet that protected Earth's trade routes. She had fought beside alien allies in the frontier wars just 2 years ago. They had saved each other's lives. They had celebrated victories together. Now those same allies would not meet her eyes through the video feed. The Valdorian continued speaking. Human military tactics in the recent conflicts have demonstrated a level of creative destruction that concerns all member species. The human capacity for adaptive warfare exceeds acceptable parameters for a galactic civilization. Park So-jin remembered the Battle of Kepler Station. The enemy had overwhelming numbers and superior technology. Standard galactic military doctrine would have demanded retreat. Instead, her human commanders had done something unexpected. They had used the station's mining equipment as weapons, turning cargo haulers into missile platforms, and converting atmospheric processors into area denial weapons. It had worked. They had won. Apparently, winning had been their mistake. Furthermore, the speaker went on, human psychological profiles indicate an alarming tendency toward unpredictable responses to stress situations. This unpredictability makes them unsuitable for integration into our carefully balanced galactic community. Dr. Lee Min-ho sat in his laboratory on Earth, watching the broadcast while his daughter Hana paced behind him. Around them, years of collaborative research filled every surface. Alien biotechnology samples sat beside human computer systems. His work on xenobiology had advanced medicine by centuries. His partnership with Nethian researchers had led to cures for diseases that had plagued humanity since the beginning of time. Hana stopped pacing and stared at the screen. They are really doing this, are they not, Father? Min-ho nodded slowly. His alien colleagues had stopped returning his messages 3 weeks ago. Research grants had been quietly canceled. Invitations to conferences had been withdrawn. The signs had been there, but he had hoped it was just political tension that would blow over. The Valdorian's next words destroyed that hope forever. Therefore, by unanimous vote of all major galactic civilizations, humanity is hereby quarantined to their home system. All jump gates connecting to Sol system will be deactivated immediately. All trade agreements are null and void. All military cooperation pacts are dissolved. All technological sharing agreements are terminated. Kim Dae-ho finally spoke. His voice carried across the Great Hall without amplification, trained by years of addressing crowds and councils. You cannot do this. We have honored every agreement. We have kept every promise. We have bled alongside your people in defense of galactic peace. We deserve better than exile. The Valdorian turned her crystalline face toward him. You deserve exactly what your nature has earned you, Ambassador. Your species' time as part of galactic civilization has ended. A Nethian representative, a being of swirling gases contained in a transparent environmental suit, floated forward. When he spoke, his voice was like wind through hollow spaces. The decision is final, human. Your people will remain in your system until such time as you evolve. Beyond your current aggressive tendencies, this may take centuries. It may take millennia. The galaxy will wait. Park Sojin felt her comm officer tapping her shoulder. The young man's face was pale with shock. Captain, we are receiving shutdown signals from all the jump gates. They are powering down the entire network connection to Sol system. She nodded grimly. How long do we have? Maybe 6 hours before the last gate goes offline. Park Sojin looked around her bridge crew. They were good people. They had families back on Earth. They had served with honor in every conflict the galaxy had asked of them. Now they were being thrown away like broken tools. Set course for Earth, she ordered. Best possible speed. We go home while we still can. Back in the Great Hall, Kim Dae-ho made one final attempt at diplomacy. Please reconsider. Isolation will not change humanity's nature. It will only make us more desperate, more dangerous. The insectoid representative from the Hive Collective clicked forward on 6 legs. Its voice was like rustling leaves. That is no longer our concern, human. Your species chose its path when it demonstrated such disturbing creativity in warfare. Now you must live with the consequences. Dr. Lee Min-ho watched the broadcast end as alien representatives filed out of the hall, leaving Kim Dae-ho standing alone. His daughter Hana had tears in her eyes. What happens now? She asked. Before he could answer, the lights in their laboratory went dark. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but the damage was done. Every piece of alien technology in the room had gone silent. Life support systems, medical equipment, research computers, even the simple communication devices that had connected Earth to the galaxy for over a century. All of it was shutting down. Min-ho looked at his daughter and saw the future in her eyes. A future without the galactic community that had lifted humanity to the stars. A future where Earth would have to survive on its own resources, with its own technology, using only its own strength. Now we learn what it means to be truly human, he said quietly. Outside their window, the lights of the city began going out one by one as alien power systems shut down across the planet. In orbit, the last human ships were racing toward the jump gate before it closed forever, carrying the news of humanity's exile to the colonies that would soon share their fate. The galaxy had made its choice. Soon, humanity would make theirs. 3 years had passed since the galaxy turned its back on humanity. Commander Cho Kyung-soo stood on the observation deck of the Seoul Administrative Tower, looking out at a city that barely resembled the shining metropolis it had once been. Half the buildings stood dark and empty. The beautiful alien architecture that had made Neo-Seoul famous across the galaxy was crumbling without the specialized maintenance systems that had kept it running. Below him, long lines of people waited for their daily food rations. The alien food synthesizers had failed within the first year, leaving humanity to rely on old-fashioned farming and whatever processed foods they could produce with their remaining technology. It was not enough. It was never enough. Kyung-soo turned as his wife Yoonji entered the room, carrying a datapad filled with reports from the outer colonies. Her face looked older than her 42 years. The stress of trying to maintain contact with scattered human settlements was wearing on her. How many more colonies went silent this week, he asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. 4, she said quietly. The mining station on Asteroid Belt 7 stopped responding on Monday. Haven Colony sent their final transmission on Wednesday. They said their life support systems were failing and they had maybe 3 days left. Kyung-soo closed his eyes. Haven Colony had been home to 12,000 people, including hundreds of children. He had visited there 2 years ago, back when they still had hope that some of the systems could be repaired. Any word from the Mars settlements? Yoonji shook her head. Yang Ji-hoon sent a message yesterday, but the quantum relay is breaking down. We could only understand half of what he said. Something about the atmosphere processors shutting down. On Mars, Yang Ji-hoon stood in the central dome of New Pyongyang Colony, watching red dust swirl outside the transparent walls. The terraforming project that had taken 50 years to complete was failing. Without the alien biotechnology that had converted the Martian atmosphere. The planet was slowly returning to its original hostile state. His son Tai-min, now 19 years old, came running up from the mining levels below. The boy's face was covered in dirt and his hands were bleeding from the rough work. All the automated mining equipment had stopped working when the alien support system shut down, forcing the colonists to dig by hand for the minerals they needed to keep their basic systems running. "Father, we found another vein of copper in Section C," Tai-min reported. "But it is deep. We will need explosives to reach it, and our supply is running low." Ji-hoon nodded grimly. Every resource had become precious beyond measure. The colony had maybe 6 months of breathable air left before the failing atmosphere processors could no longer keep up with the planet's natural atmosphere. "Take only what you need," he told his son. "And be careful. We cannot afford to lose anyone else." 3 more colonists had died in mining accidents the previous week. Without alien medical technology, injuries that would have been easily treatable had become death sentences. The colony's population had dropped from 8,000 to fewer than 3,000 in just 3 years. Back on Earth, former galactic trade negotiator Shin Bo-ra worked in the shadows of what had once been the diplomatic quarter. The beautiful alien embassy building stood empty now, their owners long gone. But Bo-ra had learned something during her years of dealing with alien merchants and politicians. They always left ways to watch their former business partners. She moved carefully through the abandoned Nethian embassy, using skills she had learned from human intelligence services years ago. The gas-based aliens had been thorough in removing their obvious technology, but they had left behind monitoring equipment hidden in the building's structure. Bo-ra activated the hidden systems using access codes she had memorized during her diplomatic career. The aliens had never imagined that humans would use their own surveillance technology against them. What she found in the data streams made her blood run cold. The aliens were not just ignoring humanity. They were actively watching Earth's decline, measuring how quickly the human population was dropping, calculating how long it would take for the species to become extinct. Worse, they were taking bets on it. The Valdorians estimated that Earth's population would drop by 70% within 10 years. The Nethians thought it would happen faster, maybe 7 years. The Hive Collective had run complex models that predicted complete human extinction within 15 years. None of them showed any concern about these predictions. In fact, many of the messages Bo-ra intercepted showed satisfaction that the human problem was solving itself naturally. Across the city, Kang Subin sat in a basement laboratory that had once been part of a major university's xenobiology department. The quantum communication equipment around her was a mixture of human and alien technology, barely held together with improvised repairs. She was one of the last people on Earth who could still intercept alien communications across interstellar distances. The messages she picked up painted a picture that was even worse than what Bo-ra had discovered. The aliens were not just waiting for humanity to die. They were actively preventing any help from reaching Earth. Several minor alien species had tried to send aid to human colonies in the early days after the abandonment. The major galactic powers had stopped these efforts, sometimes using military force. Any alien who tried to help humanity was declared a criminal and faced punishment from the Galactic Council. The galaxy had not just abandoned humanity. They had made helping humans illegal. Subin recorded every transmission, building a database of evidence that showed the true nature of humanity's exile. It was not just quarantine. It was slow, deliberate genocide through neglect and isolation. Meanwhile, in the ruins of what had been Earth's largest spaceport, Dr. Lee Min-ho and his daughter Hana worked with a small team of engineers and scientists to understand the alien technology that had been left behind. Most of it had shut down automatically when the aliens departed, but some systems had been abandoned in place. "Father, I think I understand how their power systems work," Hana said, looking up from a partially disassembled Valdorian energy converter. "The principles are not that different from our fusion reactors. They just use a different method to contain the reaction." Min-ho looked at his daughter's work with pride and sadness. She had become brilliant at reverse engineering alien technology, but it was knowledge that came too late to save most of humanity. "Can we build our own?" he asked. "Maybe," she said. "But it would take years to develop the manufacturing base we would need. And we would need materials that Earth does not have in sufficient quantities." Around them, other scientists worked on similar projects. They were learning the secrets of alien technology through careful study and desperate necessity. But each breakthrough only highlighted how dependent humanity had become on their former galactic partners. As night fell over the dying city, Kyung-soo stood again at his window, watching the few lights that still glowed in the darkness. His wife Eunji joined him, and they held each other in silence. "Do you think we will survive this?" she asked. He thought about the reports on his desk. Food shortages getting worse every month. Colonies going silent across human space. Birth rates dropping as couples chose not to bring children into a dying world. Medical systems failing without alien-supplied medicines. "I do not know," he said honestly. "But if we do survive, the galaxy will regret the day they abandoned us." Outside, the last functional alien monument in the city finally went dark, its power source exhausted. Humanity was on its own now, with nothing left but their own strength, their own ingenuity, and a growing anger at the civilizations that had left them to die alone in the darkness. 5 years after the galaxy abandoned humanity, something new was born in the darkness between the stars. Nam Woo-jin floated in the weightless laboratory of a hidden asteroid base, surrounded by weapons that no alien had ever seen before. His parents had died when the medical systems failed on Europa Colony. His sister had starved when the food synthesizer shut down on Luna Base. Now he lived for only one purpose: to make the galaxy pay for what it had done to his species. The asteroid base had no name and appeared on no official records. It was one of dozens of secret facilities that humanity had built using salvaged materials and pure desperation. The people who worked here called themselves the Ember Core because they were the last burning remnants of humanity's fire. Woo-jin turned as Oh-da-sam entered the laboratory, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. She had been a tactical officer on Mars when the atmosphere processors failed. She had watched 3,000 people die slowly as their air ran out. The experience had changed her from a by-the-book military officer into something harder and more dangerous. "The new weapons are ready for testing," Woo-jin told her, gesturing to a rack of devices that looked nothing like standard galactic military equipment. "These do not use alien technology at all. They are purely human design." Da-sam picked up one of the weapons, feeling its weight. It was heavier than alien energy weapons, more brutal looking, but it had something the alien weapons lacked. It had been built by people who understood what it meant to fight for survival. "What do they do?" she asked. "They kill aliens," Woo-jin said simply. "The Valdorians have energy shields that can stop their own weapons and most standard galactic military equipment. But these use kinetic projectiles accelerated by magnetic fields. Their shields were never designed to stop something so primitive." Across the base, Lim Jae-sung worked in what had once been a waste processing center, now converted into a reverse engineering facility. Before the abandonment, he had worked with alien technology as part of joint development projects. Now he used that knowledge to find weaknesses that the aliens never suspected humans had noticed. "Every species that abandoned us made the same mistake," he told his assistant Bae In-ha. "They assumed we were too primitive to understand how their technology really worked. They showed us their strengths, but they also revealed their weaknesses." In-ha nodded grimly. Her entire family had died in the first year after the abandonment when their colony's life support failed. She had been the only survivor, rescued by a passing human ship 3 days before her air ran out. The experience had left her with nightmares and an unshakable hatred of the aliens who had left her people to die. "The Nethians rely on their gas-based physiology for protection," Jae-sung continued, pointing to technical diagrams on his workstation. "But that same physiology makes them vulnerable to certain chemical compounds that we can synthesize easily. The Hive Collective shares consciousness through biological networks that can be disrupted if you know the right frequencies." In HA studied the data carefully. And the Valdorians? Crystal-based life forms. Jae-sung smiled coldly. They can withstand energy weapons because they absorb and redirect energy. But specific sound frequencies can shatter their molecular structure. We have been thinking about this all wrong. We do not need to match their technology. We need to use ours in ways they cannot predict or defend against. In another part of the base, Hong Ki-taek planned the first real strike against their former allies. Before the abandonment, he had been a peace activist, someone who believed that all conflicts could be resolved through talking and understanding. The slow death of billions of humans had taught him that some enemies could not be reasoned with. We have identified 17 observation posts that the aliens established around human space, he told the assembled strike team leaders. They think these stations are hidden from us, but our long-range sensors have been tracking them for months. The holographic display showed positions throughout the outer system where alien monitoring stations watched human space like vultures waiting for a corpse to stop moving. Each station was small, lightly defended, and staffed by only a few beings whose job was to observe and report on humanity's decline. These stations are how the galaxy keeps track of our extinction, Ki-taek continued. Every month they send reports back to the Galactic Council about how many human colonies have gone silent, how far our population has fallen, how close we are to complete collapse. Captain Moon Tae-ho, one of the few remaining officers from the old Earth Defense Fleet, studied the tactical situation. His ship, the Defiance, was a converted cargo hauler that had been rebuilt with human-designed weapons. It looked nothing like the sleek vessels humanity had once operated, but it was theirs, built with their own hands using their own technology. The stations are designed to defend against standard galactic weapons, Tae-ho observed. Their shields and armor are configured to stop energy weapons and conventional missiles. What happens when we hit them with something completely different? Dr. Ryu Hee-won looked up from her workstation where she had been analyzing biological samples collected from alien diplomatic missions years ago. During the peaceful years, she had studied alien physiology to help develop better medical treatments for diplomatic injuries and illnesses. Now that same knowledge served a different purpose. I have been working on biological agents specifically tailored to each alien species, she said quietly. Nothing immediately lethal, that would be too obvious, but compounds that will cause disorientation, fear, and paranoia. When beings who have never faced human opposition suddenly find themselves dealing with weapons that should not exist, and biological agents that specifically target their species, they will panic. The first test came 2 weeks later. The monitoring station designated Observer Post 7 hung in the outer darkness of the asteroid belt, its alien crew confident in their invisibility and safety. The Valdorian commander had been sending regular reports to the Galactic Council for 5 years, documenting humanity's slow decline with clinical detachment. The attack came without warning. Tae-ho's ship appeared on their sensors moving far, faster than any human vessel should have been capable of, firing weapons that registered as completely unknown energy signatures. The station's shields, designed to deflect standard energy weapons, offered no protection against the magnetic acceleration weapons that punched through their defenses like they were made of paper. Within minutes, Observer Post 7 went silent, forever. The attack was repeated at 6 other monitoring stations within the same week. Each time, the human ships struck without warning, destroyed their targets completely, and vanished before any help could arrive. No alien survivors remained to report what had happened or what kinds of weapons had been used. Back at the asteroid, Base Woojin watched the tactical reports with satisfaction. 7 posts destroyed, 0 human casualties, he announced to the assembled Ember Corps leadership. The galaxy is about to learn that reports of humanity's death have been greatly exaggerated. Dawson studied the data from their attacks. The response time from galactic military forces averaged 47 minutes. By the time they arrived, our ships were already gone. They found debris and wreckage, but no evidence of what weapons were used or how many ships were involved. Perfect, Ki-taek said. Let them wonder. Let them worry. For 5 years, they have watched us die in silence. Now they get to experience what it feels like to be afraid in the dark. Haiwan had been monitoring alien communication channels, listening to the confusion and growing concern in their military communications. They are calling emergency sessions of their defense committees. Some species are demanding increased security around their own territories. Inha looked at the tactical display showing the positions of the remaining observation posts. What about the other 10 stations? Those will be next, Wujin said. But first, we expand the core. There are human survivors scattered across dozens of dead colonies, hidden bases, and failed settlements. Most of them think they are alone. It is time to let them know they are not. As the meeting broke up, the leaders of the Ember Corps returned to their work with new purpose. They were no longer just trying to survive. They were preparing for war against an enemy that had never imagined humanity could strike back. Outside the asteroid base, construction crews worked around the clock to build more ships, more weapons, and more facilities. The humans who had been left to die in the darkness were learning to forge their own light, and that light would burn bright enough to be seen across the entire galaxy. The Ember had caught fire. Soon it would become an inferno. The galaxy noticed. What had started as isolated attacks on remote monitoring stations was growing into something that made the major alien powers nervous. General Song Ju-wan stood in the command center of Firebase Alpha, a military base built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, watching tactical displays that showed human strike forces operating across 3 different star systems simultaneously. Before the abandonment, Song had been the military liaison between human and alien forces. He had coordinated joint operations, shared intelligence, and helped plan defense strategies that protected both human and alien worlds. Now he used all that knowledge to plan attacks that the aliens could not predict or counter. Status report. He called out to his operations staff. Strike Team 7 just destroyed the Valdorian supply depot at Kepler Station, reported Captain An Ye-jin from her position at the communications console. No survivors, minimal damage to infrastructure. They took the supplies and disappeared before the defense fleet could respond. Ye-jin had once commanded a diplomatic escort vessel, protecting alien ambassadors as they traveled between worlds. Now she led retrofitted human ships in raids that used tactics the aliens had never seen before. Her flagship, the Retribution, had become the first human vessel in years to destroy an alien warship in direct combat. The Valdorians are requesting emergency assistance from the Galactic Council, she continued. They lost an entire patrol fleet yesterday when we hit them with the new sonic weapons. Their commanders are calling it an act of terrorism. Song almost smiled at that. Terrorism. They abandon billions of humans to die slowly in the darkness, and when we fight back, they call us terrorists. Across the command center, Choi Min-suk studied sensor readings from his latest engagement. His squadron had intercepted a Valdorian convoy carrying medical supplies to one of their colony worlds. Instead of destroying the ships, they had disabled them and taken everything useful, leaving the aliens stranded but alive. The crystalline life forms are starting to modify their shield configurations, Min-suk reported. They are trying to adapt to our weapons, but every change they make to defend against one type of attack creates new vulnerabilities to different attacks. Song nodded. This was exactly what he had hoped would happen. The aliens were fighting the last war, trying to defend against known threats using established military doctrine. Humans were fighting a completely different war, one where the rules changed every time the enemy adapted. What about the Nethians? Song asked. Park Hyun-woo looked up from his intelligence station. Before the abandonment, he had been a cultural exchange student, living among the gas-based aliens and learning their language and customs. Now he used that knowledge to infiltrate their facilities and turn their own systems against them. 3. More of their gas mining operations went offline this week, Hyun-woo reported. The explosions looked like industrial accidents, but they were caused by modifications I made to their atmospheric processors during covert infiltration missions. The Nethians are starting to question whether their facilities are safe from sabotage. The beauty of Hyun-woo's approach was that it used the aliens' own technology against them. The Nethians had taught him how their systems worked during the peaceful years, never imagining that knowledge would be used to destroy them. In another part of the base, John So-young worked on what might have been the most important mission of all, intelligence gathering. She had been monitoring alien communication networks, tracking their military responses, and looking for any sign that some species might be willing to reconsider the abandonment. "I have some interesting news," she told Song when he stopped by her workstation. 3 minor species have tried to reach out to human communities through underground channels. The Cathera, the Zephyrians, and the Mollusk Collective were not part of the original decision to abandon us. They were forced to go along with it by the major powers. Song considered this information carefully. "Are they offering assistance?" "Nothing concrete yet," So-young admitted. "But they are asking questions about whether humans would be willing to consider peaceful contact with species that opposed the abandonment. It might be worth exploring." Before Song could respond, alarm klaxons began sounding throughout the base. Ye-jin's voice came over the intercom system. "General, we have an incoming priority transmission from Strike Team 3. They are requesting immediate backup. It sounds like they found something big." Song hurried back to the command center, where the main display showed a star map with a pulsing red dot near the edge of human space. Strike Team 3 had been investigating rumors of a secret alien facility in that sector, something that did not appear on any official galactic charts. The face of Commander Lee Dong-ho appeared on the communication screen. His ship was shaking from weapons fire, and damage alarms were sounding in the background. "General, we found it," Dong-ho reported. "It is not just a monitoring station. This is a full military base, heavily fortified, with ships from at least 4 different alien species, and sir, they were not just watching us, they were planning something." "What kind of planning?" Song demanded. "We intercepted their communications before they spotted us," Dong-ho said, ducking as another explosion shook his ship. "They have been developing weapons specifically designed to exterminate humans. Not to feed us, sir. Exterminate us. Biological weapons, genetic viruses, atmospheric poisons. This was never about quarantine. They have been planning genocide from the beginning." Song felt a cold rage building in his chest. The galaxy had not just abandoned humanity to die naturally. They had been actively working to speed up the process. "Can you get out of there?" "Negative, sir. They have us surrounded and our jump drive is damaged, but we transmitted all the data we collected. The evidence is solid. Every major species in the galaxy knows about this facility and what it was designed to do." The transmission cut off as Dong-ho's ship was destroyed by alien fire, taking all hands with it. But the information they had died to obtain changed everything. Song called an emergency meeting of all strike team commanders and base personnel. Within an hour, every human military leader still alive was looking at the evidence that Strike Team 3 had transmitted before their destruction. "Ladies and gentlemen," Song began, "we now have absolute proof that the abandonment was never about protecting galactic civilization from human aggression. It was the first step in a planned extermination of our entire species." The room was silent as the implications sank in. "The facility that Strike Team 3 discovered was producing weapons specifically designed to kill humans," Song continued. "Biological agents that target human DNA, atmospheric poisons that would make Earth uninhabitable, viral weapons that would spread through human populations and cause sterility, ensuring that even if some of us survived the initial attack, we would have no future generations." Captain Kim So-ra, the commander of Firebase Beta, spoke first. "How long have they been working on this?" "According to the intercepted files since before the abandonment was announced," Song replied. "They made their decision to eliminate humanity years ago. The public quarantine was just cover for their real plan." Ye-jin stood up, her face hard with anger. "Then we know what we have to do. No more limited strikes on monitoring posts. No more surgical raids on supply convoys. They want to exterminate us, so we return the favor." "The evidence So-young gathered suggests that not all species were part of this plan," Song pointed out. "Some of the minor powers might be willing to ally with us against the major species that are trying to wipe us out. And some might not," Min-suk countered. "How do we tell which ones were planning to kill us and which ones were just willing to stand by and watch it happen? In the end, does it matter?" Song looked around the room at the faces of humanity's last military leaders. They were scarred, exhausted, and filled with a rage that had been building for years. They had watched their families die, their worlds go dark, and their species pushed to the edge of extinction. Now they knew it had all been planned from the beginning. We expand operations immediately, Song decided. Every human survivor, every hidden base, every salvaged ship gets brought into the core. We stop hiding in the shadows and start hitting them where it hurts. Supply lines, civilian targets, core worlds. If they want to play extinction games, we show them how humans play. The meeting broke up with new orders being issued across the human underground network. Within days, coordinated attacks began hitting alien targets across multiple sectors. The galaxy that had spent 5 years waiting for humanity to die quietly was about to learn what happened when humans decided to die fighting. The fire was spreading, and soon it would consume everything the aliens had built. The galaxy burned. Admiral Yu Sung-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance, watching as the Valdorian homeworld's orbital defense platforms exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Around him, dozens of human warships pressed their attack, using weapons that the crystalline aliens had never seen before and could not defend against. 3 months had passed since the discovery of the alien extermination facility. In that time, humanity had abandoned all pretense of limited warfare. The Ember Corps had grown from a few thousand desperate survivors into a military force that struck terror into the hearts of civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. "Admiral, the planetary shields are down," reported Captain Kim Sora from her tactical station. "We have clear targeting solutions on all major population centers." Sung-ho studied the blue-green world below them. Before the abandonment, he had visited this planet as part of a diplomatic mission. He had walked in the crystal gardens of their capital city, marveled at the beauty of their architecture, and shared meals with Valdorian officials who had seemed genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation with humanity. Those same officials had voted to quarantine humanity, and then secretly funded the development of weapons designed to wipe out every man, woman, and child on Earth. "Begin bombardment," Sung-ho ordered. "Target government facilities, military installations, and industrial centers. Avoid civilian residential areas where possible." "Sir," Sora said carefully, "intelligence reports indicate that 60% of the Valdorian population supported the decision to abandon humanity. Should we really be avoiding civilian targets?" Sung-ho was quiet for a moment, thinking about the billions of humans who had died in the years since the abandonment. Children who had starved when the food synthesizers failed. Elderly people who had suffocated when life support systems shut down. Entire colonies that had gone silent. Their populations dead from causes that could have been easily prevented if the galaxy had not decided to let them die. "Fire," he said simply. Below them, the crystal spires of the Valdorian capital began to crumble as human weapons found their targets. But even as his ships destroyed the infrastructure of an alien world, Sung-ho took no pleasure in the act. This was not victory. This was simply the galaxy reaping what it had sown. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human strike forces hit target after target with devastating effectiveness. The aliens had spent 5 years preparing for humanity's extinction. Humanity had spent those same 5 years learning how to kill their former allies. On the insectoid homeworld of the Hive Collective, Seo Jae-hoon led a ground assault that used psychological warfare tactics specifically designed to exploit the bug's networked consciousness. The creatures that had once seemed invincible because of their shared minds discovered that those same shared minds made them vulnerable to carefully designed mental attacks. Jae-hoon's team used sonic weapons that broadcast specific frequencies directly into the Hive network, causing confusion and panic to spread through entire populations instantaneously. Within hours, Hive clusters that had been perfectly coordinated for millions of years were tearing themselves apart in mindless terror. "The primary Hive complex is in complete chaos," reported his communications officer, Park Min-jung. "There, military forces are receiving contradictory orders from 17 different Hive nodes. Some clusters are attacking their own allies." Jae-hoon watched through his tactical display as insectoid armies that should have been defending their homeworld instead fought each other in the streets of their cities. The beauty of the psychological attack was that it required no additional resources. Once introduced into the Hive network, the confusion spread on its own, growing stronger with each mind it touched. "Move to Phase 2, he ordered. "Deploy the biological agents." The weapons that Dr. Ryu Haiwan had developed specifically for insectoid physiology were dispersed through the atmosphere using modified atmospheric processors. The compounds were not immediately lethal, but they attacked the chemical signals that allowed individual bugs to communicate with their hive minds. Within days, the most unified civilization in the galaxy was reduced to billions of isolated individuals who could no longer function as a society. Meanwhile, on the Nethian gas mining worlds, former cultural exchange student Park Hyun-woo had turned his knowledge of their society into a weapon of unprecedented effectiveness. The gas-based aliens relied on complex atmospheric processing systems to maintain the environmental conditions they needed to survive outside their home atmosphere. Hyun-woo had spent months infiltrating their industrial facilities, making subtle modifications to their equipment that would not be noticed during routine inspections but would cause catastrophic failures when the systems were stressed. Now, as human fleets attacked their military forces, those hidden sabotage programs activated across dozens of worlds simultaneously. Entire Nethian colonies found their atmospheres becoming toxic as processing plants malfunctioned in ways their engineers could not understand or repair. Panic spread through their civilization as world after world reported system failures that seemed to be spreading like a plague. "The Nethians are evacuating 17 colony worlds," Hyun-woo reported to Admiral Sung-ho during a strategic briefing. "Their industrial capacity is down by 40% and falling. They are requesting emergency assistance from every other major species in the galaxy." "And are they getting help?" Sung-ho asked. "Some," Hyun-woo admitted. "But most species are too busy dealing with their own problems to spare resources for anyone else." That was the genius of humanity's coordinated assault. Instead of focusing their limited forces on one enemy at a time, they had struck all the major galactic powers simultaneously. Each alien civilization found itself facing an existential crisis while being unable to rely on their traditional allies for support. In the deepest levels of Firebase Alpha, Jung Da-eun worked on what might have been the most important operation of the entire war. She had been studying the galactic communication network that connected all the major worlds and civilizations. During the peaceful years, this network had been used to facilitate trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Now, it would serve a very different purpose. "The virus is ready," she reported to General Song Ju-won. "Once we introduce it into the network, it will spread to every major computer system in the galaxy within 72 hours. Song studied the technical specifications of the program that Da-eun had designed. It was not a typical computer virus. Instead, it was designed to systematically corrupt the databases that contained information about human colonies, human technology, and human capabilities. When this runs, every major alien government will find that their intelligence files on humanity have been replaced with propaganda that makes us look like primitive savages who pose no real threat to galactic security," Song said. "Exactly," Da-eun replied. "But more than that, it will also plant evidence suggesting that several major species have been secretly planning to betray their allies. The Valdorians will think the Nethians have been plotting against them. The Hive Collective will believe both the Valdorians and Nethians are planning to attack them," Song smiled grimly. "Divide and conquer." "It gets better," Da-eun continued. "The virus will also activate hidden communication protocols that will make it appear as though human forces are much larger than they actually are. Their sensors will start detecting human fleets in sectors where no human ships have ever operated. Within hours of the virus's release, the galactic communication network began spreading misinformation and paranoia at light speed. Alien governments that had been allied for centuries began to suspect each other of treachery. Military forces that should have been coordinating against human attacks instead began preparing to defend against their former friends. The psychological effect was devastating. The galaxy that had once stood united in its decision to abandon humanity now found itself fragmented by suspicion and fear. As reports came in from across human space, the leadership of the Ember Corps realized that their campaign of vengeance had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. The major galactic powers were not just being defeated, they were destroying themselves. "Admiral," Sora reported during another tactical briefing, "we are receiving surrender offers from 43 different alien governments. Most of them are minor species that were forced to participate in the abandonment, but never wanted to. And the major powers?" Sung-Ho asked. "The Valdorians are requesting a ceasefire and negotiations. The Nethians have withdrawn their fleets to defend their core worlds. The Hive Collective appears to be having some kind of civil war as different Hive clusters turn against each other." Sung-Ho looked out at the stars through the viewport of his ship. 5 years ago, those same stars had been part of a galaxy that welcomed humanity as junior partners in a vast civilization. Now they belonged to a galaxy that had learned to fear the species it had tried to exterminate. "No ceasefires," he said, finally. "No negotiations. They made their choice when they decided we should die quietly in the darkness. Now they live with the consequences. The war was not over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had lit the fires of vengeance, and those fires would burn until there was nothing left of the civilization." The galaxy lay in ruins. Captain Moon Teho stood on the observation deck of his flagship as the last Valdorian crystal cities shattered under human weapons fire, their beautiful spires collapsing into glittering dust that would drift in space for centuries to come. Around him, the stars that had once hosted thriving alien civilizations now glowed with the light of burning worlds. 7 years had passed since humanity began its campaign of vengeance. 7 years of coordinated strikes, psychological warfare, and systematic destruction that had brought the greatest galactic civilization in history to its knees. The species that had abandoned humanity to die in darkness now faced extinction themselves. Taiho activated his communication system and opened a channel to the Ember Corps Command Center. The face of President Quan Min-Kyu appeared on the screen, looking older and more tired than his 53 years. The man who had been elected to lead humanity's first post-abandonment government bore the weight of decisions that would determine the future of every living being in the galaxy. "Status. Report, Captain," Min-Kyu said. "The Valdorian homeworld has fallen," Teho reported. "Their government surrendered 3 hours ago. That makes them the last of the major powers to capitulate. The war is effectively over." Min-Kyu nodded slowly. "Casualties on our side?" "Minimal. The final assault cost us 4 ships and 37 lives. Total human casualties for the entire campaign remain under 2,000. It was a remarkably low number, considering that humanity had just conquered a galaxy. But then, the aliens had never been prepared for the kind of war that humans had brought to them. Their military doctrine was based on centuries of civilized conflict between species that followed established rules of engagement. Humans had thrown out those rules and fought with the desperate creativity of a species that had nothing left to lose. "What about alien casualties?" Min-Kyu asked, though. His expression suggested he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Teho consulted his reports. "Preliminary estimates suggest that we have eliminated approximately 60% of the Valdorian population. The Nethian death toll is around 70%. The Hive Collective is down to maybe 10% of its original population, but their reproductive capabilities mean they could recover if given time." Min-Kyu was quiet for a moment, processing numbers that represented the deaths of billions of sentient beings. "And the minor species?" "Most of them surrendered early in the campaign when they realized we were not interested in exterminating everyone," Teho said. "Species that opposed the original abandonment have been spared. Those that supported it have been dealt with accordingly." The distinction had been important to some members of the Ember Corps leadership. Commander Lim Yuri had argued that humanity should show mercy to aliens who had been forced into the abandonment against their will. Her research had identified dozens of minor species that had privately opposed the decision to quarantine humanity, but had been overruled by the major powers. "Sir, I have Dr. No Yoon-soo requesting immediate communication." Taiho's communications officer reported. "She says it is urgent." Min-Kyu nodded. "Put her through." Dr. Yunsu had been one of the few voices of moderation in the human government during the war years. As the director of the post-war planning committee, she had spent months studying the long-term consequences of humanity's campaign of vengeance. Her face appeared on the communication screen, and she looked deeply troubled. "Mr. President, we have a problem," she said without preamble. "I have been analyzing the galactic ecosystem data, and the destruction we have caused is going to have consequences that extend far beyond the species we targeted." "Explain," Min-Kyu said. "The major alien civilizations were not just political entities," Yunsu said. "They were integral parts of the galactic ecosystem. The Valdorians maintained the crystal networks that regulated energy flow between star systems. The Nethians managed atmospheric processing on hundreds of worlds. The Hive Collective controlled biological systems across entire sectors." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "Without those species to maintain the systems they built, we are looking at ecological collapse on a galactic scale. Worlds that have been terraformed will revert to hostile environments. Trade routes that depend on alien technology will become impassable. The entire infrastructure of galactic civilization will break down within a generation." Taeho felt a chill as he realized what she was saying. "You mean we have not just conquered the galaxy, we have destroyed it?" "That is exactly what I mean," Hunsu confirmed. "We have won the war, but there might not be a galaxy left to rule." Min-Kyu turned away from the screen, looking out at the stars through his office viewport. "What are our options?" "We can try to maintain some of the alien systems using human technology," Yunsu said. "But we do not have the population or industrial base to replace what we have destroyed. Or we can allow selected alien populations to survive and continue their ecosystem maintenance functions under human oversight. In other words, we become their masters instead of their executioners," Min-Kyu said. "It might be the only way to prevent the complete collapse of galactic civilization," Yunsu admitted. "The alternative is to rule over a galaxy of dead worlds." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Commander Yuri, who was leading mop-up operations in the outer sectors. Her face appeared on a secondary screen and she looked excited. "Mr. President, we have received a communication from a coalition of minor alien species," she reported. "They are requesting permission to establish a provisional government that would operate under human authority. They claim to represent 47 different civilizations that opposed the abandonment." Min-Kyu considered this development. "What are they offering?" "Complete submission to human authority in exchange for protection from the chaos that is spreading as the major powers collapse," Yuri said. "They also offer to help maintain critical galactic infrastructure and provide technical expertise that we might need to prevent ecosystem collapse." It was an offer that might solve many of humanity's post-war problems, but it also raised questions about what kind of civilization humans wanted to build from the ashes of their vengeance. "Doctor," Yunsu spoke up again. "Mr. President, I need to show you something else. We have been monitoring human birth rates and population growth since the war began. The combination of improved living conditions and the psychological boost from our military victories has led to a significant increase in human reproduction. Our population is growing faster than it has in centuries." She transmitted a data file that showed population projections for the next 50 years. "If these trends continue, humanity will number in the hundreds of billions within 2 generations. We will need the resources and living space of the entire galaxy to support that kind of growth." Min-Kyu studied the projections, thinking about the children who were being born into a universe where humanity ruled supreme. They would grow up knowing only human dominance, never experiencing the fear and desperation that had driven their parents to such extremes. "What kind of galaxy do we want those children to inherit?" he asked, more to himself than to his advisors. Taeho answered anyway. "One where they never have to wonder if their species will survive until tomorrow. One where no alien civilization will ever again have the power to abandon humanity to die alone in the darkness. But also one where we do not have to be the monsters who destroyed an entire galactic civilization," Yunsu added. "We can choose to be better than the species that abandoned us." Min-Kyu made his decision. "Commander Yuri, accept the coalition's Offer. We will establish a provisional galactic government with humanity as the dominant power, but we will allow cooperative alien species to maintain their worlds and cultures under our protection. He paused, thinking about the billions of humans who had died during the abandonment years. However, make it clear that this is not forgiveness. This is practical necessity. Any species that participated in the plan to exterminate humanity will face justice. Any species that tries to betray our trust will be eliminated without hesitation. Understood, sir, Yuri replied. What about the major power species that are still alive? Survivors from the major powers will be relocated to designated worlds where they can be monitored, Minkyu decided. They will live, but they will live as subjects of humanity. Their children will grow up learning human history, human values, and human languages. In a few generations, they will remember their ancestors' crimes and understand why humanity rules the galaxy. Over the following months, the new galactic order took shape. Human administrators took control of major trade routes, military installations, and industrial facilities. Alien species that had opposed the abandonment were allowed to maintain their governments under human oversight. Those that had supported it found themselves living under direct human rule. Captain Han Soo-jin, the new director of galactic integration, worked with Dr. Yoon Soo to establish systems that would prevent future alien uprisings while maintaining the technological infrastructure needed for galactic civilization. It was a delicate balance between security and functionality. The key is education, Soo-jin explained during a briefing with other human leaders. Every alien child in the galaxy will learn about the abandonment in school. They